Heinz, we are here in front of the base in 2025. What was it like in 1987?
First of all, it was much warmer because we came here in summer, actually in August, when we started with the first DTS that took place on the base here. So, of course, it was different. Lots of things have changed. We are, in a building that has evolved into something new, but the basics are still the same. So, in terms of buildings, we are different people, a different community. At that time, everybody was a bit uncertain what was going on, how are we going to manage it, and so on. But eventually it worked out, and we're still here.
And do you remember what your impression was when you first came here? Like, what was the good parts about this place, or why did you choose this place here?
We were actually working in Biel at that time, and we did not have enough space because we had too many schools running at the same time. So we needed more space. We were in a process of about, I guess, a good year, a bit more even, for looking to look for something new. And eventually we were offered this place here by the owners because they wanted to shut it down. It was a private hospital for people with multiple sclerosis, so they wanted to stop it, and that's how we got into it, and they offered it to us. So long process basically.
Yeah. And do you remember in the years anything that was special to you that changed over time, or any events that were special to you?
Well, there were several, of course. We have a long history, lots of things, but eventually we had to shut down the place in Biel and move everything here, which was also taking a bit of time. So that certainly was not just one event, but a period that was very important for us. So we had to rearrange how we do things because everything was now run in here. We had some financial challenges in 1999, which were really hard. We were not sure whether we could continue, so those were major events. But I think on the other side was when we could start new courses, like we had the first SBS School of Evangelism, Family Ministry School in 1987. So all of these things that started something, which still are going on, partly in other places, that was really important. And nice to see.
Okay. And you mentioned that people were kind of uncertain when this whole thing started. How did you deal with that transformation, new situation? How did God act in that time?
That's very hard to say. First of all, we dealt with it as we could, and that of course meant we had our limitations. We were not trained in that. We were trying to get something going, not knowing where it goes. How did God deal with us? I think that's the main point, with a lot of grace. And balancing our sometimes not so smart decisions. So it was a process of growing together, learning from mistakes, learning from input from other people we knew, and of course that gave stability over the time. So.
Okay, thank you so far. Heinz, we are here in your office now.
Yep.
You have been working with and on the Bible for a very long time. Do you remember how you first got interested in that area?
That was actually starting in '87, when we started with the SBS here. I was helping with translation. So I would be in the SBS to translate the speakers. One of them was the founder, basically, of the SBS for YWAM, Dr. Earl Morey. And I just thought this is very interesting. And we ran partly seminars, just up to 3 weeks with him, And then, of course, when we started the SBS, he was here as well. And that is how my interest got started in that. But I was not working with SBS. I was actually doing the administration of the base in Biel at that time.
Okay. And what was it that kind of fascinated you about the Bible or studying the Bible?
I tried to figure out over the years why actually. Maybe that's related to my training. I was a technical draftsman, so it is mechanical engineering, which means you want to find out new things and make them available or usable for some purposes. And I think that is my motivation in SBS, to find new things and learn that, study, work with other people and make it available for them and for others. So that's the basics, I think.
Okay. Do you have like a favorite book in the Bible or that you like to study or to teach?
Meanwhile, I'm over 30 years in SBS now. So meanwhile, I cannot say I have a favorite book. But of course, I do prefer those that I teach a lot because I spend more time within them. But I think there are books where you kind of, especially those where you don't find teachers for, like Lamentations. Try to find a guest speaker for Lamentations. So as an SBS leader, you have to study it yourself. And if you want to learn from the book, you get into it in a much deeper way. And I think that motivates then to teach it well, but also to like it more, because you discover things yourself and not just from another book or so.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. What if you had to explain to somebody who doesn't really know what does it mean to study the Bible? What goes into it? Like, what kind of methods do you need, or what's the process like?
Yeah. First of all, I think we usually put a quote of Karl Barth on our course flyers or so, and he said you can find a lot of things in the Bible, interesting, historical, personal, whatever, but if you don't look for anything, you don't find anything. So I think first you need to want to find something, and then I think the key is to try and see what's there instead of try and know already what's there. To put our own ideas first in the background, never works completely, but and try to learn from the text itself and see what's there, and then understand how this worked when it was written long time ago. How was the effect of that in ancient cultures, and from that we then can learn, but we first have to understand it in the original setting. So I think that is a process that helps.
Okay. If you think about all the characters in the Bible, is there someone that is kind of inspiring to you or interesting to you? All the different personalities that appear.
Yeah. There's one thing I learned when I studied the Old Testament in various books, and that is no one, not even the greatest hero there, is perfect. Yeah. Which is something I like, because that means I don't have to be perfect either. Yeah. So, and God could still achieve his goals through these people, so he still can do today. So this is a general idea. And of course I'm very fond of Paul, because I learned how much care he put into his letters, and how much understanding that he had of the society around him, that he put in there as well. So he certainly would be an example. A challenging one, of course, but quite an interesting one.
I also like to know a little bit about your teaching and what you have been doing all these years. How did you learn, or how did you get into teaching?
Okay, the first thing that I learned from Maury was not about teaching, but about studying, because he said, if you want to teach the Bible, you have to study the Bible.
Right.
If you want to teach the people to learn how to study the Bible, you have to prepare the same way. So don't get some information from some source and just put things together, but study first the same way, come up with your results, and then you can start presenting it to the people and working with the people.
Okay.
So that is, I think, the first basic principle. Yeah.
Okay. What did you like over the years about teaching people and working with people?
I think what you just said as a second line, working with people.
Yeah.
So teaching in SBS is more like working through a book as a study community. So we learn together. Of course, I prepare, I think about how to communicate things and so on. So it's interacting with people I think is the very interesting thing. And I like to, when teaching, I like to think or spend a lot of time on the thought, how can I present it in a way that people get most out of it? So I'm not focusing completely on what I teach, but very, very strongly also how do I teach and how does that help the people? And actually I spend more time on that because what I teach, usually the information I can put together in a reasonable time, but then when you only have 5 minutes left to run into the teaching or in class, it's not really helpful for people. Okay. So how can I pass it on? What would the people benefit most from it? I think are important parts, and I like that. So
yeah. And then now that you're not finishing your work completely here, but then what you just said, pass it on. How would you like to pass on your work somehow? Do you have some ideas there?
Well, first of all, I'd like to continue. We still will run the bi-weekly course that I'm involved in. We are planning on getting the SBS up again, but I think it would be just to be able to help others do similar things, not the same thing, because that never works, but also to pick up the idea or the motivation to want to train others, but also to want to study with others. So if that happens, I think the rest is just going.
will go smoothly. Yeah. So do you have any specific plans for the future, for the next 20 years maybe?
Well, one would be I work on consolidating my material because I have accumulated a lot of material. Partly it is handwritten because we started long ago. So to make that available to others, making resources available, I think that is one aspect. And just to continue and going on studying, basically. Other than that, there are not really any plans. Have some more free time. That is also a plan, of course. That's interesting for my wife Anita and me. But other than that, we just keep on going, basically.
Okay, thank you very much, Heinz, for sharing all these things with us. And then we wish you good luck with your plans.
Okay, thank you.